I think you can start, Rabbi, and people will come on.
Okay, the source sheets are in the silence. I just pulled them up. What?
Wait, did you make yourself host?
I didn't make myself anything, to be honest.
So if you want, I can make myself host and I can give it to you. And then
it doesn't matter. If you can do it, it's fine.
But the shorts, I'd rather you have the power of sharing whenever you want. So do you have the source sheet with you?
No, I sent you last night. If not, I'll pull them up as needed.
Okay, no, I made it onto a Daf Mekorot, and Sipora sent it out.
Okay, then never mind. Let's start now. I'll manage. Don't worry. Just if I can share the screen, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that now. Hold on.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, Todah Rabah for giving me the zchut of being able to teach Torah. It's always important to teach Torah. It's especially also gratifying and the big zchut to be able to teach Torah in these times. I'll say the following. I think when confronting death and disease and tragedy, and these are much more tragic than they were intended to be, unfortunately. I think you have to fight them with life, and the Torat Chaim is one of the ways of confronting both disease and loss. So by producing Torat Chaim, Bezrat Hashem will be some of Ilun Neshama and the Nechama. And I devote this, of course, to Rabbi Henkin and to all the many other people who are unfortunately, tragically ill and who died from the pandemic. So he's a Lizchutam Ilun Nishmatam. I was asked to choose a topic about Jews and Goyim, and one which was halachic but hashkafic, or at least that's what I decided I was asked. So I will present the topic here, which is halachic in its sources, but it sits on a hashkafic foundation, and if it has hashkafic implications, I just have to make be upfront about one thing. There's a lot of data here, and I'm going to give an overview, basically. To properly do this, we have to make a series of 5-10 shiurim, devoting each one to an individual topic. And I will give an overview, and I will choose within the 3-4 areas we'll discuss, I'll choose a particular interpretation without trying to qualify and nuance it with presenting the whole spectrum of opinions. I will choose what suits tonight's thesis, and therefore I'm just now being upfront that there are other opinions as well. Okay. The Torah, besides for the interaction between Jews and non-Jews regarding conquering Eretz Yisrael and all religious and political issues, just many monetary issues in which there are transactions, commercial transactions between Jew and non-Jew, and these are dictated by a whole series of halachot. Sometimes the halachot are similar. some ways they're different, not pro or negative. They're just different. How you make a transaction between a Jew and a Goy, and there's a big problem with Mechrat Chametz, for instance. Some of the rules, some of the ground rules are different. And it's difficult to see any kind of logic behind it. Aside from the fact that they're different, it's hard to say anything. Some of them, though, are clearly, it's like this, they seem to discriminate against Goyim to the benefit of Jews. And so while some are pretty straightforward and the halachot are the same, some seem to discriminate. Let's take one example, and it's an example which the Gemara already is aware of the sensitivity. I'll read it in Hebrew and translate if I hope it's all right. We're here in 1 second. We're in this is Masechet Bava Kama. Excuse me. This is Pasuk in Sefer Dvarim. Excuse me. Let's start from that. It talks about the mitzvah of Shmitat Ksafim. Once every 7 years, right? You absolve all the debts. There's a general pardon of all debts. Anyone who owes somebody else money, at the end of 7 years, you forgive the debt. Of course, nowadays we make a prusbul, and we basically found a loophole, or Hillel Zakein found a loophole 2,000 years ago. But nevertheless, the Torah basically mandates forgiving debt once every 7 years. This is part of the Shemitah that we held on the one level, everyone is equal, no one has economic advantage. It's part of helping out people who are in distress. You pardon their debts, they're able to turn a new page, to make a fresh beginning. The Torah describes this as part of a whole bunch of social laws in the beginning of Dvarim, Perek Tedvav, right over here. Miked Sheva Shemitah, at the end of 7 years, you make a Shemitah, meaning you absolve all the debts. V'zeh Dvar Shemitah, this is what the Shemitah consists of. Shamot kol bal nashei yado. Okay, this is pretty difficult Hebrew, but it means simply you forgive the debts. Asher Hashem re'ehu, when there's any debt that you want to prosecute against re'ehu, your friend, lo yigosat re'ehu, you don't sue him, you can't go and sue him. Kikra shmitah Hashem, it's a year of pardon and forgiveness. Et hanochri tigos. However, the guy, you can go and prosecute him and sue him in court. To your brethren, you forgive and you absolve them of debt. And yet in Goyim, you go and you demand, you go to court to demand your debts. Now, we're not talking here about mitzvot. We're talking here about a social mitzvah. And of course, the fact that the Torah is quite clear in differentiating between Jew and Goy, it's clear the Torah does this, right? It's very upfront about it. The guy, you will go and sue and you will collect your debts, while from the Jew you won't. Now, this is true, another mitzvah. The Torah repeats the same formula, a very similar formula. If I go a few chapters ahead, here we are in, the Torah talks about the Isur of taking interest, of usury. Here it is. Lo tashich la'achicha neshech kesef. You can't take interest on a loan, neither money nor merchandise. Neshech ocha, anything. Neshech kol davar she'yishach. You cannot collect interest from a debt. You have to take it interest-free, or gemach, in other words. La nochri tashich, ula'achicha lo tashich. To the guy, you can charge interest. And of course, that's how Jews, to a large degree, support themselves in the Middle Ages. But from Jews, you can't collect any interest. Okay, once more, ever since the 17th century, we have a loophole for this as well. But in theory, they're not supposed to take interest. And I'll say, if you go make a commercial loan, you loan to a neighbor who's in trouble, a person who's struggling, you indeed, to this very day, should not take interest and rather provide it to him as chesed. Here, too, the Torah differentiates between the two of them. Now, these are the two places in which it's explicit. There are many other places in which it's implicit. It doesn't say clearly to the guy yes and to the Jew no, but it's quite clear that with all kinds of dispensations you give to Jews, you don't give to goy. Now, This is two psukim. At the moment, I'm presenting this as some of a problem or as an enigma. Let's move on now to Chazal, who are clearly aware of the sensitivity. I'll take you to a Mishnah Bava Kama. Here we are. The Mishnah says like this: Shor sheYisrael shenagach shor shel hekedesh. If an ox of a Jew gores or damages an ox of Beis Hamikdash, or vice versa, shel hekedesh shenagach shor shel idiot. If one of the animals of Beis Hamikdash causes damages to your animal, to put in contemporary terms, and this is misleading because we'll see why later, if a car of Beis Hamikdash crashes into your car, so then he doesn't pay. And the same is true also. If you crash into Beis Hamikdash, or to Hekdesh, and they crash into you, patur, you don't pay. Shneimar shore'ehu, the animal of your companion, and the Hekdesh is nobody's friend. Or to put it differently, Hekdesh is a corporate body. Either it's a corporate body or it's a religious body. Either way, Hekdesh is not considered a companion, and therefore you are exempt from paying. Shosh Yisrael Shanagach Shosh Knani. Knani means any goy, just because of various problems over the ages and censorship, so it's changed to Knani. An animal of a Jew who damages an animal of a goy is patur. He doesn't pay anything. And the reverse, if a guy's animal damages that of a Jew, he pays complete damages. This is important. Why complete? Because normally, if you remember Parshat Mishpatim, if it's a negicha, which we'll talk about here, if it gores it, or to put it differently, it does anything which is not normal, like eating or walking. It does something out of the ordinary, something unexpected. So then he pays the first 3 times only 50%. Only from the 4th time onwards do you pay full damages. Up to the first 3 times, you pay 50%. Okay, now I'm skipping here some of the halachic discussion, even though it said before, the details here do matter, but I'm skipping it because of time constraints. Let's move now to next down to the Gemara. The Gemara tells the following story. Tanu Rabbanan. We have a Braita. Ukvar Shalcha Malchut Romi, like the Roman Empire sent Shnei Sayyidatot. Whatever that means, it means something rather, some kind of delegates, advocates, various political figures, like a Sar, ministers, whatever. It's a Chachmei Yisrael, Lamdunu Toratchem, teach us Torah, Karu Vishanu Vishushu. They studied Torah thoroughly. Bishat P'tiratan, when they went back to Rome, Amru Lahem, so after spending 3 years in yeshiva, what is their opinion of Torah? Amru Lahem, Dikdaknu b'chol Toratchem v'emetu. We're extremely impressed by entire Torah, except for one thing, Chutz midavar zeh she'atem omrim, except for this Mishnah, Shosh Yisrael shenagach Shosh Knani patur. This Mishnah that discriminates against goyim, this we find, this is unacceptable. Everything else is fine. Toratchem emetu, this is a counterfeit though. Manafshach. Now they explain also, after 3 years, they got a Gemara cup. And so now they explain. Mimanafshach, either or. If we say it's a halakhic companionship, ireu davka, afilu kinani, so then the guy who damages the Jew should also be exempt, should be patur, because the Jew is not his companion. And if we assume that monetary issues that have to do with companionship, so the Jew should also be chayiv. The davar zeh, however, because we saw in the narrative Torah, davar zeh ein anu modim odo lamalchut. So with this, we will not squeal to the malchut. Of course, in the Middle Ages, it wasn't always like that. There were bigger problems. Clearly, it's the discrimination is very sensitive. And the problem, I said before, the problem here really is a problem of we understand this about mitzvot. We understand that with tefillah, it's an interesting topic. But why in monetary relationships does this matter? Let me maybe form the question. Additionally, presumably in monetary relationships, there's no such thing as Jew and Goy. Right? Jew and Goy matter regarding religion, regarding if we want to talk about the election of Am Yisrael, B'chiras Yisrael. We want to talk about religious obligations, me and God relationship. Why should this matter in terms of property and ownership? In other words, a man is a human being is a human being. There should be any difference in between Jew and Goy. You don't own property as a Jew. You own property as a human being. You don't, right, your animal doesn't do damages as a Jewish animal or as a non-Jewish animal. It does it simply as an animal belonging to a person. And therefore, we should speak about person, people, person. The Rav would say homo economicus or something like that. We should not talk, though, about Jew and Goy. And nevertheless, we find it. Now, to round this out, I should really quote another Gemara Baba Kama, but it's a very complicated Gemara, so I'll summarize it later on. But now, let me try now to explain this a bit more clearly, or to move on to the next stage, and to try to somehow to begin to develop a solution to this. And to do this, I'd like now to go. I'll remind you again that we've seen now 3 examples. Number 1 was forgiving debt every 7 years. Number 2 is collecting interest on a loan. And number 3 is the animals who the ox who gores another ox and now has to pay or not. Let's take a 4th example, Ashvat Aveda. Right? If you remember the Pesukim, maybe let's pull them up again. When the Torah talks about Ashvat Aveda, notice, and this is not coincidental, all of this is in the same parsha. It's often said Dvarim, most of it is from Parsha Kiteitzei. Here I am. This is the mitzvah Shor Saveda. Lo tired shor achicha, your brother's ox. And what's more, animal? Ox is an example, any animal. Oh, it's seyot nidachim. Vitalamte mehem hashay d'shveim lachicha. You shouldn't see or observe the animal of your brother wandering or lost, and you purposely don't pay attention. Hashev teshiveh, you have to return them le'achicha. If you know krov achicha elecha v'lo yedato, if he's too distant, you take it home, you safeguard it, you retain it until you can have the opportunity to return it. V'chein taseh, any object, not only animals, it's true of also inanimate objects as well. Chen taseh l'chavidat achicha. Lo tiret chamor achicha. So this is an animal who is crouching under the burden, that the load is too heavy and the animal is simply collapsing. Hakem takim imo, you have to relieve the animal of some of the load and allow him to get up and stand up again. And notice in 4 psukim, achicha 1, achicha 2, achicha 3, achicha 4, achicha 5 in Hashar Saveda, and number 6 over here, which goes together. And so within 4 psukim, we have achicha 6 times. And therefore, it's also pretty clear, and this is clear throughout all the discussions in the Mishnah and the Gemara, that the mitzvah is only to a Jew and not to a Goy. He's not considered achicha. On the other hand, if I put these examples aside, do you remember the other areas, which of course are equal to Jew and Goy? It's also to steal from a Goy. It's you take a loan from a Goy, you obviously have to pay it back, and so on. In other words, you make a transaction with a guy, you have to fulfill the transaction you made, etc. In other words, anything having to do with theft or with taking money, you have to return. What's wrong? I'm telling you an overview without getting to some. There are some exceptions, but broadly speaking, this is the system. Now, what exactly is going on over here? So, in order to understand this, I'd like to take a comment of the Meiri and the Ramban. We'll start from the Meiri, and then we'll go to the Ramban in a moment. And here we'll have to get a bit of a halachic analysis for a moment. Just 1 second. One moment. Okay, the Meiri is talking here about returning and Jew non-Jew monetary relationships, and he makes the following comment. Just 1 second. Just a moment. Let me find the exact. Okay, here it is. One moment. Okay, here it is. He's talking now about whether you have to return Aveda to a goy. Mikol makom ein adam chayav lechazer achar avedato v'lo af mi shematza avedato ino chayav lachzira. It's like this: you don't have to go and seek out his lost objects. Not only that, if you find the lost object, Misha Matzah Veidato, you find something that Goy lost, Eino Chayav Lachzira, you're exempt from the obligation of returning it. Why? Now he provides explanation. Shemitziah Miktzat Kinyanhu V'chazarato Derech Chasidut. Okay, now here I have to explain a bit. The Meiri is basically raising a question here about the nature of the mitzvah of Shabbos Aveda. And there are two, broadly speaking, there are two main, there are two basic directions, or two schools of thought. Why am I obligated to return a lost object? I'm walking down the street, I'm at an airport, I see someone left a computer. Can I take it or not? So there's a mitzvah of Shabbos Aveda. What would be if there wasn't a mitzvah? Like, what would have been the halacha without the mitzvah? If the Torah had been neutral, if the Torah had not addressed the whole issue, what would we have said? There are two possible ways of addressing this issue. One of them is to say that this object belongs to someone. In other words, a person loses an object, it remains in his ownership. To put it differently, ownership is not dependent upon possession. Normally, what is ownership? If we're talking about halachically speaking, and not only halach, it's true about any legal system, right? Ownership generally has two basic principles. One is possession, the other is title. On the one hand, I have the title to the object. On the other hand, I also have I have control. Right? So, for instance, there's a Gemara at the end of Chulin. If a horse rebels, sus shamarad, or tanagolet shamarda, your animal decides he's had too much, and he's escaping, and the animal runs away. A runaway animal, it seems to be from the Gemara that you no longer own it. Once the animal runs away, you've lost your ownership. Even running, of course, I should add, in a way that there's no hope of returning. If the dog runs away just to get you a bit anxious and then he comes back, it's nothing. We're talking here about he runs off to the forest and disappears. Sounds like the Gemara that you lost the ownership. That implies that ownership is basically based upon possession. There's another school of thought that believes that title alone can give you ownership. In other words, obviously, it's better to have both title and possession. But nevertheless, if you have only the title, that is a form of ownership. Now, Hashavat Aveidah is one of the test cases. Hashavat Aveidah, you've lost possession. You still, in theory, it's still yours, right? It's still registered in your name. If there's a registry of whatever, let's say it's a famous painting and there's a registry of paintings, so it's still in your title, but you lost possession. And because of that, the status of the lost object is ambiguous. You can view it on one level you can claim it remains in the ownership of the person who lost it, but he's in trouble. Now I find it. Here I am in the airport and I found this computer. So it belongs to him. Why do I have to return it? So first of all, I can't take it because it's theft. If I will take it, I basically stolen his computer. Do I have to go chase him or not? Maybe not. I can take it home and wait for him to call me. But at the very least, I cannot take ownership of it because it's not mine. It belongs to him. It doesn't belong to me. I have no right. And if it belongs to him, so then I should, of course, return it to him. What's called in halacha, mamono gabach. His property is by you. Now, on the other theory, loss of possession means you forfeit your ownership. Ownership without possession is meaningless. There's, of course, a underlying assumption here that why do we, and this is true of Chazal always, why do we have possessions to use them? And Chazal did not believe that a person should amass possessions just for the sake of saying that he owns X, Y, Z. The only logical reason to have something is to use it. And if you're not going to use it, you shouldn't own it. And so if you lose possession, you can't utilize it. So then you've lost ownership. And essentially the moment that the object cannot be used and it's gone, so I said for the animal that rebelled, or take a famous case like Rabbi Metzia, you have a diamond that falls to the bottom of the river. That's it. Even though it's in your ownership, meaning no, it's still in your register in your name, it's gone because it's the bottom of the river, so it no longer belongs to you. Now, the Meiri is adopting this approach. Now, let's go back and look at the text again. The Meiri says as follows: Shemitziah miktzat kinyan. Essentially says, when you find an object, it belongs to you. Why does it belong to you? Because he's lost his ownership, because since he's lost possession, so basically it's not his anymore. Without the sans the Torah, without the mitzvahs, finders keepers, and there's no it's morally and legally fine, because ownership isn't forfeited when it can't be utilized. So mitziah miktzat kinyan. So why do I have to return it? The chazarato derech chasidut. Meaning the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda is not rooted in a monetary obligation. It's not because I'm denying him his property. It's my property. What I'm doing is Gmilut Chesed. What's Chesed? Or what's Tzedakah? Tzedakah and Chesed, I take from mine and I give to you. It's not yours, it's mine. But Sheli, but I make it Shelcha. I take my property and I give it to you. So he says that Hashavas Aveda is the same idea. In theory, HaMitziah Miktzat Kinyan. In theory, that it belongs to me, but the Torah obligated me to do Gmilut Chesed because it was yours, because it belonged to you. So therefore, it's a mitzvah of Chesed to give it over to you. Now, I just added here briefly that the Meiri, I can't quote the Meiri without mentioning this. The Meiri personally has a different theory of what's considered Jew and a guy for this. The Meiri differentiates between civilized and non-civilized nations, but it doesn't really matter. For our purposes, his basic theory is that the reason the Torah exempted you from returning an Aveda is because in essence, it's not a monetary issue. Why can you not steal? Because there it is a monetary issue. In other words, whatever, simply put, what I asked before is correct. My original question, can you differentiate between a Jew and a Goy for monetary issues? The answer is no. So what happens? Rather, he's assuming that Shabbat Aveidah at root, in its essence, is not a monetary relationship. It's a relationship of chesed. Or to put it differently, in its essence, it's not a mitzvah ben Adam la chaveiro. It's not between me and him because he has an obligation upon me. It's ben Adam la makom. The Torah told me to do chesed. Now, obviously, he'll be the beneficiary of the chesed, but essentially, it's my morality. The Torah told me to be a chassid. The Torah told me to have good, to be ethical and to have good character, and therefore I have to. This is the Meiri's theory. And the same idea appears in the Ramban. Let's now see. Let's see in the Ramban. One moment. He talks about the mitzvah of collecting interest on a debt. Ube'er bekan, the Torah told us, it's permissible to take interest from a goy. But you cannot do that, of course, if we're talking about theft. And now, what's the reason? So he'll say in a minute exactly what the Meiri said. 1 second. The Torah is explicit that you can take interest from a goy. Regarding gezel and gneva, it's prohibited. Gezel goy asur. So why is this so? Haribid shu na'asal ledat shnehem uvirtzonam. He's saying as the following. Here too, let me go back and present the basic question in the Gemara regarding taking interest. To take ribis or take interest is there are two schools of thought here as well. One school of thought is that it's a form of theft. It's sophisticated theft. If you want, it's pseudo theft. It's not full-fledged robbery. But nevertheless, you're basically taking money which you don't deserve. The assumption is that if I give 100, I should give back 100. If I'm getting back 120, the 20 are being unlawfully, I'm basically extorting them unlawfully. And there's assumption here that if you're getting more than you gave, so what you're getting doesn't belong to you. To put it differently, this is basically a theory of the Catholic Church throughout the Middle Ages, in which usury is a cardinal sin because it's seen as taking something that doesn't belong to you. It's a form of theft. You can benefit. I can charge you for my labor. I can charge you for renting my car because that's producing economic benefit. But finance something is it's considered unlawful. That's one school of thought where the Catholics are very big upon this. In the Gemara itself, it finds expressions. In Gemara, for instance, Bamitzia Daf Samach Aleph clearly is operating off of that principle. However, on the other hand, you can take the opposite view. You can take the view, if I rent my apartment, I can charge you rent. Everyone's fine with that. I rent my car, I can charge, Hertz and Avis can charge you $100 a day to rent a car. I can rent a tuxedo. I can rent my money. Interest is simply paying rent for use of the money. You want to rent a car. You want to rent an apartment. You want to rent money. So you rent money. You pay the same pay for anything else. So why does in other words, there is nothing morally wrong per se. It's no different. and then renting out any other object. So why would the Torah prohibit it? For different reason. And here I have to mention another piece of information. The Torah doesn't assume commercial loans, right? The Torah never heard of lines of credit and commercial loans. When you give a loan in the Torah, you're giving a loan to someone to pay his grocery bills. Im kesef talve et ami et ani imach. If you make a loan to a Jew, you're loaning to a poor person. And right, one of the highest levels of tzedakah is to loan. Because by loaning something, A, you're providing him with a more dignified opportunity. B, you can also usually loan larger sums. What you give tzedakah is normally a lower sum you're willing to loan because when you loan, you get it back at some point or another. And the Torah is assuming throughout that loans are made to poor people for purposes of paying the grocery bills. And therefore, the Torah surrounded all the halachot dealing with loans with a huge cushion of chesed. It begins, I said before, the mitzvah of forgiving debts once every 7 years. There's economic, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make, even morally, there's nothing wrong with collecting a debt. Nevertheless, right, the presumption is if you bury a person under a mountain of debt, even if he now can somehow begin to support himself and he's able, if a person has a mountain of debt, and then Baruch Hashem, he's able to somehow rehabilitate himself, he's able to put his finances together, he will nevertheless be stuck because the original debt that he's schlepping on his shoulders for years will never allow him to escape. So if once every 7 years you wipe the slate clean and you forgive all the debt, so now if he's not functioning, he'll fall into debt again, no doubt. But if he's a functioning person, he can now escape the burden of debt. So it's an act of chesed, and that's by the way the reason. Let's say nowadays, should person write a prusbul? So I'll tell you exactly what I recommend to my talmidim, what I do myself personally also. For the loans that I have at the bank, my deposits in the bank are technically their loans, right? I deposit my money in a savings account. Technically, it's a loan. So I don't think the Torah is interested in giving the bank a windfall once every 7 years. So morally, there's nothing wrong with not forgiving that debt. Halachically is a problem. So Baruch Hashem, Hillel HaZaken found the halachic solution. So I see no moral or ethical problem in utilizing the solution because the Torah is not seeking to provide banks with profit at the expense of the average middle-income and middle-class saver. On the other hand, if I give a loan to a neighbor, I once had a mice like this. I gave a few thousand shekel to a neighbor, and I forgot about it, actually. He never paid back. I forgot about it. He showed up 10 years later. He wants to pay it back. I said to him, there's a Shmitat Ksafim. And I'd written a prusbul, of course, because of the bank. I said to him, look, there's a Shmitat Ksafim. And, such debts, and I really think the Torah wanted me to forgive them. To tell the poor person, he indeed wanted them to be forgiven. So I forgave him. So he was a moral person. So he told me what the Mishnah says. Nevertheless, I want to repay. Right? That's what he's supposed to say. And the Mishnah says he should say that. Okay, so I told him to give it to tzedakah, or to do whatever he wanted. But this is not the point. The Torah is assuming that all hilchot halva'ah really are dealing with people in distress. Now, what's the second cushion besides for forgiving once every 7 years? You don't take interest. At the moment you begin to take interest, so we all know how this thing works, right? At the end of the day, you pay more interest than the principal. You end up basically, the moment you take a loan with interest, you're in bigger trouble than if you hadn't taken the loan many times because now the interest accumulates. So the Torah says that you shouldn't take interest either. It also has a whole bunch of halachot, which I won't discuss tonight, about how do you collect the debt. Right? What you can take, what you cannot take, when can you take, how can you take. It's very clear also that collection is very limited relative to modern standards. Anyways, let's go back to Ramban. So Ramban's like this. Not only, what I said before was true, you're renting out your money. It's totally moral. There's no problem with it. You're renting out your money. The Ramban also says it's also done from your own volition. No one forces you to take it. What circumstances force you. But in terms of, it's like a theft is done by coercion, right? I break into your house. I never asked your permission. I take it by violence. Over here, you request a loan. It's the person's own volition. No one forces him. So what's the reason? There's nothing, it's legally, from a monetary perspective, it's fine. So why the Torah prohibited? It's an act of chesed. Once more, it's a mitzvah of Adam lamakom, really. Or Adam lachavero in the terms of chesed. He's nothing to do with, the Gemara B'Metzia says, have to take interest, excuse me, the question's like this. Why does a attractive ribbon interest? It said already, don't steal. Lo tigzol. Okay, the answer is whatever it answers. The Ramban is saying, no, the Torah is not talking about Geza. The Torah is talking about V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And here he says, Ki chesed v'rachamim ya'asei machiv. It's basically an act of chesed and compassion. Kasher yalvenu b'lo ribit, and it can be considered tzedakah. V'chein hashmita, what we spoke about before, chesed be'achim. And therefore, over there also, right, the Torah is the same phrase. Hashmita chesed be'achim, l'kach amarat hanuchri tigos. And not only that, it praised those who do it. The kavalo bracha. The pasuk says, the man yivarechecha Hashem, because it really is not self-evident you should be doing this. And the Ramban says, the Torah will praise you when it talks about things which you do above and beyond. Hakatuv lo yasker bracha rak b'tzedakah v'chasadim. You do chesed, you do something which you're not obligated, but you do something above and beyond, the Torah will bless you. If you don't steal or you don't charge outrageous price on na'ah, the Torah won't praise you. No, you should be. You should be doing what you should be doing. So the Torah only praise you when you do chesed v'rachamim. This is Ramban's theory, and that's why I take another last pasuk. The Torah talks when you collect the debt also. Ulechat tiyeh tzedakah. In other words, when you collect the debt, you collected property. Ulechat tiyeh tzedakah, and the Gemara says. How do we know that the collateral belongs to the lender? The reason we're praising you is because you are basically forfeiting something which you own. You're doing chesed. If you didn't own it, we wouldn't be praising you. It would be simply plain and simple legal obligation. Okay, so now, if we take the Ramban and the Meiri, we can basically arrive, I think, at the following suggestion. Whatever has to do with monetary obligations, there is no difference between a Jew and a Goy. Jew and Goy are the same. You can't steal from a Goy. The Ramban talks about ona'ah, that you cannot charge a price which is unfair. All of these have to do with commercial relationships, and over there, basically, Jew and Goy are equal. I'm saying once we're in parentheses, there here and there's some exceptions which have to be discussed individually. But I said before that requires a whole course, not a 1 hour lecture. But broadly speaking, this is the rule. Now, when do we differentiate? Those things which are chesed v'rachamim, those things it's legitimate to differentiate. Now, here I'd like to expand upon this a bit more. All right, the Ramban says, Ki chesed v'nasei mechiv, and that's why I went out of my way before to point out that the Torah uses the word achicha 6 times within 4 psukim. Now, what's the logic behind this? Or what's the rationale behind it? So here, I think I have to differentiate or make the following point. Let me talk for a moment not about Jew, non-Jew. Let me talk about myself and my neighbors. I have relationships with. You take a bus, you ride the train, you walk down the street. So obviously you have to act morally towards whoever you encounter. And you're walking in Fifth Avenue, you're walking in Rehov Yafo, you can't attack anyone, chas v'shalom, and you can't just steal, you can't pickpocket the person next to you on the bus, etc. All this, of course, is evident. That's basic morality. On the other hand, there are certain things that I will do to close friends and mishpacha that I won't do to others. For instance, I won't take my car and crash and drive in the neighbor's lawn. Jew, non-Jew, doesn't matter. On the other hand, if the neighbor comes to me, he wants to borrow my car for a week because he wants to go on a trip down south. So, I say, with all due respect, I'm not going to give you my car for a week. In other words, certain acts, are not expecting, it's not moral to damage him. It's moral to say, in kol hakavod, with all due respect, I have to give you my car for a week, or I don't want to, whatever, all kinds of favors, which may be exaggerated, I won't do. I'll do, obviously, a basic favor, but something which makes a large claim on me, I won't do. On the other hand, if the neighbor will call me at 3 a.m. and I'm stuck in the airport, please pick me up, I'll say, kol hakavod, take a taxi. If my daughter will call me at 3 a.m. from any place, I will get out of bed and go, and of course, go help her. I'm glad to say, 3 a.m. it never happened. 4:30 a.m. it happened. My daughter called. She got a flat tire. I got out of bed and I went and rescued her at 4:30 a.m. And I didn't tell her, call it a towing service or whatever. And why? Because we close relationships. Right? The reason is I treat every human being the way I want others to treat me. Right? Or what Kant would say, you have to do unto others what you expect them to do unto you. All that is fine. But the Kantian ethic will only get you to treat others properly. Relationships, when you do a favor, when you do things which are not normally expected, it's in order to express a relationship. Why did I do it for my daughter? I want to express my love. I want to express, how much I care about her. I want to give a message of love and so on. And the same, by the way, is true also in the reverse. If the neighbor's kid will scatter garbage on the sidewalk, I'll be upset. I won't say anything. If my kid will do it, I'll yell at him, because the relationship also assumes I want to educate him because I have a relationship. In other words, relationships make a big difference in terms of, or they basically, they create an expectation and the norm, which is different than the human being, the regular, normal, ethical attitude. Now, I think the same is true regarding Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu. And here we have to talk about the following. We have Midat HaYirah, right, awe, trembling. We have Midat HaAhava, right, love, intimacy. Tanakh describes both. Tanakh describes both, right, divine glory, and Kadosh Baruch Hu is he's transcendental, he's distant. Describes also, of course, right, the Shir Shiri model of how close and intimate the Kadosh Baruch Hu and Yisrael are. It says, "L'sis ba'Hashem tagel nafshi be'Elokai ki chatan yichayin per." Am Yisrael and Kadosh Baruch Hu are the lover and the beloved, the dod and the ra'aya, the chasa and the kala. And they're also, of course, with like the Rambam calls us, we are the briash fela afela, this minuscule, minute, garnished, and we all remember from the Ilah, me'anu, mechayenu, mechazdenu, ma'yishuatenu, and we're talking the Tana Tokef, and right, ketzitz novel, kavak poreach, etc. Now, in this regard, it seems there's a big difference between these two relationships regarding Jew and non-Jew. From the perspective of that Hayirah, everyone is a zero. Everyone is tiny and insignificant. From the perspective of the infinite transcendental perspective, when Yeshayahu talks about Hein Goyim Kamar Midli, everyone's like a drop in the bucket. He's like a speck of dust. It's true about the Jew, it's true about the non-Jew. All of us are nothing. We're specks of dust in this infinite, huge cosmos. And for that, being a Jew and being a Goy, Kosh Baruch Hu is transcendental, and we are not. He's infinite, we're finite. And the Shum Davar Lo Yishaneh. In that regard, so there's no religious difference, or the religious difference really pales. And however, from the perspective of ahava, of relationships, there is a difference. From that point of view, now I'm not going to discuss here now with the limited time we have, why was Am Yisrael chosen? At the moment, I'm just leaving that as a given. But I will take what I believe to be the position of the Kuzari, which is that Am Yisrael and the Kodesh Baruch Hu have a unique relationship. If I have to basically, in a nutshell, summarize the Kuzari's approach, even though he has very bad publicity in terms of being anti-Goyim, but he really isn't. And in essence, what the Kuzari says is as follows. Natural religion, the fact that man has to worship the Creator, that man is subordinate to the Creator, and the fact that Kosh Baruch Hu is transcendental and we are therefore subordinate, that the Kuzari thinks is incumbent upon Jew and non-Jew. There's no difference between the Jew and the non-Jew. What is the difference? What he calls Ha'inyan Ha'eloki, which, if I have to translate, means the relationship with the divine. It means not how philosophically, metaphysically we relate to Kodesh Baruch Hu. It means he loves us. This is the Chatan Kala. This is the Dot and the Raya. Or let me put it differently, the Torah itself actually, the Chatan and Kala you find in the Vim Ketuvim. The Torah itself, it's parent-child. Banim atem Hashem Elokechem. And now what's the point of Banim? A child, on the one hand, the parent has authority over the child. But on the other hand, there's a relationship. This is not exercising authority the way a king or military command uses authority. This is this expression of love. You fuse together authority and love. And therefore, I said before, you do for your child what you don't do for others. So from one perspective, Jews and Goyim, everyone's the same. From another perspective, Jews have a unique relationship because, and I said before, I can't discuss now why, and the different theories why the relationship was established. But at the end of the day, it's a relationship. So therefore, you cannot, anything that has to do with humanity or areas of treating a non-Jew humanly, so before, anything which is monetary relationships, which are basically human relationships, Jew and Goy are the same. However, Chesed, let's say before, Chesed, basically I give from what I have, from what I own. Now I should give to everybody, but nevertheless, there are concentric circles. There's a circle of humanity. There's a circle of right. For my family, I'll do more than I'll do for a stranger. Not for my family, right? For my children, I'll do the most. For cousins, I'll do less. For friends, I'll have a third circle. For neighbors, maybe a fourth circle, and so on and so forth. In other words, here there are very different degrees of what I'll do. So they're really concentric circles. And this was happening over here. From the perspective of Hashavat Aveidah, the Torah wants us to treat other Jews not as human beings, also as human beings, but also as brothers. Called Yisrael Achim. Right, so the two phrases here, Achicha and Re'ehu. Sometimes Achicha, sometimes Re'ehu. But both of them imply relationships. Right? If you think about some of right, think for a moment about the mitzvah of murder, right? Makeh ish v'beit. It doesn't say makeh achiv. He says, Makeh ish v'met. The problem is to murder anybody. To murder a guy is Nisur D'Oraisa. But because it doesn't say Makeh achicha, right? Or it doesn't say, lo, it says Lo Tigzol, it doesn't say Lo Tigzol et achicha. It says Lo Tigzol. When it says Lo Tignov, it says Lo Tignovu. Right? For instance, not to pay on time is a very high probability the problem is to a goy as well. The Torah doesn't say it says Lo Tashok Schar Sachir. You cannot prevent a laborer from getting paid properly. It doesn't say your brother the laborer. Where does it say this? It says this in those mitzvot which essentially are non-monetary. To put it differently, if you're studying B'Matzir, B'Makama, so what you can do is, rather than take these mitzvot to learn about the Jew-Goy relationship, use them to learn about Hashem Saveda. And if you want to know what's the nature of Hashem Saveda, what's the nature of Ribit, this becomes the litmus test. You now ask yourself, is a Shevet Avedah monetary or chesed? Let's see what happens by a goy. And so essentially, what's basically what we're seeing here is that whole areas which deal with money are deep down at root. They're not monetary obligations; they're personal obligations of chesed. And those, they're varying degrees. Now, let me, for a moment, allow the Rambam to speak. We haven't seen the Rambam all evening, so let's give him his due. Second. Okay, what's the Rambam? The Rambam here, he tells us clearly what the Gemara says about Hashem Saveda, of course. Hashavat Avedah L'Yisrael Mitzat Aseh, there's a mitzvah to return lost objects. Hashed Vim L'Achicha. Avedat Hagoy Muteret. Correct. However, the Rambam says, Vim Hichzir L'Kadesh Et Hashem Kadesh Efrot Yisrael. Okay, this is a bit problematic. But the Rambam, anyway, he says that it's preferable to return Aveda to Goyim. And another place to talk also, you're not obligated. But the Rambam thinks it's the right thing to do. And it's the right thing to do because there is a certain level of chesed which spreads across all humanity. In the Rambam, with the caveat that he's not an idolater. If you're over there with the Zohar, the Rambam thinks you have no right to exist. And I don't discuss the Rambam's attitude towards people who worship with the Zohar at the moment. But if you're assuming that you're religiously not negative, so then the Rambam thinks it's preferable or it's recommended, nevertheless, to basic forms of chesed to do. There's another Rambam Chos Malachim which is more important. Maybe I'll quote this as well. 1 second. Here it is. I hope. Okay, never mind. Now, what this takes us is to the following point. Bechirat Yisrael is not because I'm Yisrael. It's like this. It doesn't. This is the crucial point here. Bechirat Yisrael, Am Yisrael is being chosen, being elected by Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's not because it doesn't make us more human and going less human. It doesn't make us superhuman and then plainly human. It doesn't make us Chas v'Shalom human and then subhuman. It means something totally different. In terms of humanity, everyone is the same. It means, though, in terms of relationships, right? The same way that the prime minister or the president has one relationship with all the citizens, he has another relationship with his wife, with his children, with his close friends. So too, the Kadosh Baruch Hu is Melech Malchei Melachim. So he has a relationship with all of humanity. With Am Yisrael, he has a relationship as his mishpacha, quote unquote. Banim atem Hashem Elokechem, right? And that's why the pasuk talks about Ami atem. Ki Ami atem means you're my mishpacha. And because of that, so the same way we do certain things to mishpacha, we don't do to others, because Baruch Hu treats us differently than others because of the relationship. And this also manifests itself in the relationship between Jew and fellow Jew because we're simply mishpacha. We are one large mishpacha, and because of that, it manifests itself. And so therefore, wherever the mitzvot are relationships, there's indeed a difference between a Jew and the goy. When they're non-relationships, they're just rooted in simple ethics, so then there's no difference. Now, to conclude, you should ask me an obvious question. All this may make sense regarding loaning with interest, regarding returning a lost object. I said before, loss of possessions, loss of ownership. We begin, though, with the case of an ox growing an ox. In other words, a case in which animal A damaged animal B. Presumably, that's a clear-cut case of plain monetary relationships. And because of that, it should be that Jew and Goy are equal. Nevertheless, this whole Chadgadi began an hour ago, showing that they're different. So this would seem basically to disprove the whole theory. Now, I'll to answer to solve the problem, I'll say two things. Number one, and once more, I'm using an escape hatch over here. The Gemara in Baba Kama has seems like one theory that in principle it should have been like this, but Kadosh Baruch Hu was penalizing the Goyim for refusing to accept the Torah. Okay, that's one part. In the Gemara, it sounds like that, but at the moment, I don't want to go down that path now. There's another way to deal with this. I like to conclude this because I think it highlights very nicely the whole line of thought I was trying to develop. I told you before, whatever is plain, basic monetary relationships, no difference. And this is you, but however, you can use this, you can basically turn the pyramid on its head. You can use this halacha to try to decipher what's the nature of a particular monetary obligation. And this is what's happening over here. I heard from Rav Meidan once, I think it makes a lot of sense. The Gemara is not exempting Jews from paying damages to Goy in most cases of damage, only in a short time. If you remember, right, Masechet Baba Kama begins, Arba Avot Nezikin. There are 4 different categories of damages. Now, without explaining all of them, broadly speaking, short time is unique. Short time, right, means the innocent ox. He's never done any damage before. He's acting out of, by goring someone, he's acting out of character. So therefore, we forgive him. Now you pay only 50%. Don't you pay only 50%? What you're really saying is, in essence, there's no liability. Had there been liability, it should have been 100%. When you come and say that you pay 50%, so what you really say, and now the Gemara has a debate about this, Baba Kama Daf Tedvav. We won't discuss this now, but broadly speaking, what you're really saying is that had there been liability, it would have been 100% like everything else. And when you pay for damages that you caused, for instance, setting fire to a field, or crashing into a car, or letting the animal, not prevent the animal from doing things which should have been expected, you have full liability and you pay to Goyim as well. That's Adam Amazik or Shen Veregel or a bar, any obstacle, any damages of negligence that you are liable for, you will pay to a Goy as well. The Mishnah is talking only about a short time. Short time is considered not to be a problem of negligence because it's unexpected. And therefore, in essence, there's no liability. What the Torah wanted participation. So now here, since in theory there's no liability, we can exempt you from not paying a goy. We can now you could say it should be mutual. Okay, so there the Gemara already thought that once I say it has to do with relationships, we can decide it should be mutual. We can decide they're not mutual. We can decide that there's a penalty for other reasons. But what really is being said here is more that's telling us about the Jew versus Goy, and this is the point that there's two Goyim there, for the two Roman Goyim couldn't figure out. It tells you more about Makama and less about Jew-Goy relationships. And what's telling you the short time is a very particular nature, but once you accept that point that 50% liability really means no liability, so then this fits into that pattern in the exact same way. And okay, that's more or less like a halachic intersection here between the halachot, the matir halachot, together with the hashkafa behind it. I hope it's food for thought, and think if you agree or disagree, you're welcome to contact me. Toda rabah. And thank you very much for giving me the privilege of teaching, and toda rabah.
Thank you so much for teaching. Thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.